What's going on, Wolfpack? Welcome back to another episode of Market Watch Mondays. As always, I am your host, Mike, aka at Mike Me Up with 2 P's on Twitter. Find me on there. Holla back at your boy. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry that this episode's coming out a bit late this week. So this past weekend, I was in New York, partially for the Big Dogs draft weekend, as well as just spending some time with my girlfriend, visiting some friends, and just checking out the city. So I didn't really have a good time to actually record the episode. So it was like I was either going to record a really shitty episode in the hotel somewhere, kind of like what I did with the fantasy football convention weekend, but I didn't really want to do that again. I just want to have like higher quality videos. Obviously, I want to have a mic, my all set up and all that. And so I decided to just wait a couple days and just delay the episode for this week. So we're still not missing an episode. So I don't want to do that. But unfortunately, I had to delay a little bit. So apologies to those of you out there that were waiting on it for Monday morning and did not come out. This episode, you'll be catching it on Wednesday, probably later on in the afternoon or evening, depending on when my editor is able to edit the video. So that one's on me. I apologize to y'all. Hopefully that won't happen again. Just caught me at a bad time on that weekend. I couldn't get an episode to record before I left. So this is what we're left with. But no worries, we're back. The content will still be good. The information will still be flowing. Hopefully help you guys make those dynasty decisions, as I always do. Before we move on to the episode, you guys know what time it is. Hit that intro. All right, anyways, as I was saying, it was a great weekend, man. I flew out to New York, met up with the boys, saw Nick. It was his birthday, so hollered at him. Saw Steve. Fortunately, missed Snacks and Animal because I had to dip out and wasn't able to stay for the nighttime shenanigans. But it was good. It was a good time, man. I was there for the entire draft, the BDG draft. Met some of the new folks. Met some of the OGs, the ones that I was in the league and started playing with when Nick first put together the very first BDG draft weekend and the second year. Shout out to Brett, who joined the second year. Shout out to the true OGs all the way from the first year. Kyle, we got Chris, we got a bunch of other guys as well. Sorry, I don't know why I'm blanking on all the names. We got Pierce as well. It's a good event every single year. And this is the first year that's been put together where I'm actually not a participant, because now I'm like a content creator for the BDG team, so obviously want to free up that slot open for other people to kind of participate and jump in, and most importantly, give people a chance. Give people a chance to win. I'm just kidding. Brett actually was a champion from last year, so holla at him. Hopefully, maybe he'll get to defend the crown. It was a great time. Nick put together a dope time. Steve, a.k.a. the MVP behind the scenes, did some awesome catering food, put it all together, got supplies, got all that shit. So it looked dope, man. It looked dope. The house was amazing. It was like a 3-4 massive house. I don't know. Nick found that place, but it was super dope. A bunch of people staying there. So it was just good to swing by, say hi to the folks, and just, catch up with some old friends. So that was a really enjoyable time. And then I went on my ways, and me and my girlfriend kind of explored the city. I met up with my best friend in the city. Went and ate just a ton of food. Just ate. I think I gained like 5 pounds over the weekend alone. Hopefully, some of that's water weight. Who the fuck knows? We'll see what happens. But I'm back on the wagon. Hopefully for this upcoming week. But anyways, man, New York was awesome, man. New York's just a great time. You guys have never been there, check it out. Lots of great food, lots of great places to check out. I actually went to the Comedy Cellar as well. The comedians that night were like kind of whatever, but Comedy Cellar is always like a fun time. So yeah, man, lots of good stuff to check out there. If you guys ever need recommendations in New York City for food, hit me up, because I'm a big fatty and I love food. That's pretty much what I love to do. So anyways, enough about my weekend, enough about New York. Let's get down to business. On this episode, I want to cover injuries, right? And what to do when trading for players with injuries. When to trade for players with injuries, when not to. The reason why is because we have so many injuries this preseason already, this offseason. It's been a really, really brutal offseason, man, with all the rookie wide receiver injuries, which I talked about a couple weeks ago. But now, we had Cam Akers, who suffered the, potentially career-threatening, career-ending Achilles injury. So I've already talked about him, but we had Travis Etienne, got a Liz Frank injury on his foot, so that's not good for running backs either. And then This past week, we had friggin' JK Dobbins go down with an ACL, and I think potentially, was it like LCL? I don't know how many CLs there are, man. There's like a fucking million CLs when it comes to football. Like, I learned more about knees after starting fantasy football than I ever have in my entire life. Because before fantasy football, I could care less about knees. Now we got MCL, PCL, like all this shit, ACL, and now LCL, which is something else I learned. But all that to say, brutal injury. Both of them are done for the season. And immediately after that happened, not immediately, but after a couple of days, I let it marinate a little bit. I went out there and started making trades, right? And it always comes back to, people always say, like, you should always acquire players at an injury discount, always get guys at an injury discount. And I think, that's like true to a degree, but like I think in some of these instances, I'm not really trying to acquire an injury discount. Let's go through the 3 running backs. Those are, I think, the ones that are most catastrophic, right? You got Cam Akers, obviously Achilles injury. He's obviously done for the season. The question is whether or not he'll ever come back and be what he was before. Achilles injury has been known to be the kiss of death for the running back position because, you really need your Achilles to have the burst, right? To be able to make the cuts and burst through the holes. And, that's exactly what Cam Akers did. So it'll be a question mark of whether or not he comes back. So that one seemed pretty straightforward, and it seemed like the entire community kind of understood that, his price plummeted, and, all of my Cam Akers teams also bit the dust a little bit. So it's hate to see it, but, it's part of the game. So that one was pretty obvious. Now, Travis Etienne, right? This is another interesting one. Liz Frank injury, not necessarily career-threatening, but if you look at some of the doctors are saying, shout out to Edwin on Twitter at FB Injury Doc. He said, like, most of them, the average person that comes back from a Liz Frank injury, I think they suffer like 20 to 25% production loss. And that's not surprising either, right? Because, again, it's a foot injury. Like, foot injuries are not good for running backs because that is where all the juice comes from for them. So it kind of makes sense. And for me, when I saw that, my immediate reaction was to go out there and try and trade away Travis Etienne to someone else for anything around a first-round pick equivalent. Now, why am I trading away Travis Etienne? Because if you think about it, this is a very kind of interesting case, right? So you have a new coaching regime coming in, right? And last year, you had a more than capable running back that you basically had on your roster for free in James Robinson. It was an absolute stud. And they went out and overdrafted another running back in the first round who was seen as a bit of a catch specialist, but also a very productive and high-end prospect. And the reason why it's unique is because we don't know if Travis Etienne is good yet. We think he's good, right? A lot of us think he's good because in college he was very productive. He broke out in an early age, and he was very proficient in the passing game. And, everything seemed to point to the signs that he would be a good running back, right? And maybe that's still the case. But here's the thing we don't know, right? And the thing with the reason that made Travis Etienne such a great pick this year was because he was being discounted, and some people didn't like him, didn't think he was a top end prospect. But I like grabbing him because he had a first round draft capital. He's going to a team, even though it has an established guy, and James Robinson is actually pretty damn good. It's a totally new coaching regime, and he had first round draft capital, and he had receiving upside, and those are really all I needed, right, to invest in Travis Etienne. But now we look at the situation there, and it's the James Robinson show yet again. It's James Robinson, and Carlos Hyde is pretty much his only competition, right? And we all know Carlos Hyde is kind of washed. So what happens if James Robinson goes out there and puts up another monster season, kind of like what he did last year? Maybe not as good as last year. Maybe he has some TD regression, but let's say he goes out there and puts up like 1,200 yards rushing, 1,100 yards rushing, 8 to 10 TDs, another, 30 to 40 catches or whatever for, a couple hundred more yards, and you're talking another 1,300, 1,400 yards from scrimmage season. Now it becomes very hard to eliminate him from the equation because you have back-to-back years. It's going to be hard to say, well, that was a fluke. And it's going to be hard to say, well, he's undrafted free agent once he's produced that amount. And Travis Etienne took the entire year, which was supposed to be a very important developmental year. For those who don't remember, the one knock against Travis Etienne is he doesn't really have patience. He doesn't really have the best vision. Doesn't really have the best feet. Doesn't really have the best efficiency. He just has explosiveness, and he's very, very agile and has the ability to go from 0 to 60 in like that, right? And so he had all the tools, the physical tools, but he really needed to develop. Not only develop his running game, probably develop in his pass catching game, probably also develop in his pass pro game. But now he lost that. The entire season is gone. The entire season of development and learning for Travis Etienne's gone. So, you take on a lot of risk when you get someone like that, right? And I tweeted this before, and it's not to say they're the exact same player, but if you think about the Chris Carson versus Rashad Penny parallel and the James Robinson versus Travis Etienne parallel, it's very, very, it's uncanny, right? How similar it is. Both Travis Etienne and Rashad Penny were first round draft picks, probably reaches, right, by both their respective teams, and they were coming in to usurp an incumbent who has proven to be pretty damn good in Chris Carson. Those of you guys don't remember, Chris Carson was a baller his rookie year until he got injured. And then James Robinson, who obviously went out there and balled like a monster last year. And now both of them suffered pretty big injuries in their first year as rookies. Now Travis Etienne's a little bit bigger because he's gone for the entire season. Rashad Penny had like that hand injury that kind of like stifled him, and he wasn't able to come back and take over. But very similar early career arcs. Not to say that Rashad Penny is as good of a prospect as Travis Etienne. I don't think he is. Travis Etienne played at a Power 5 conference and was a monster early on, whereas Rashad Penny played in the Mountain WAC conference and played with a dominant O-line. I mean, Travis Etienne, I guess, played with a dominant team as well in Clemson in the ACC, but, a little bit different there. But I think just that career arc and trajectory makes me very, very uncomfortable, right? So if anyone is giving me an opportunity to cash out a Travis Etienne at a first-round pick value, I think that's great. Whether it's a first-round pick in 2022, 2023, there's a good chance that first-round pick is equivalent in value to Travis Etienne next year. You might lose a little bit, but here's the thing. The value for Travis Etienne is not going to go up between now and next year. There's just no opportunity for that to happen, right? He's not going to see the field. All you're going to get is injury updates, and then when he comes back on injured, people are going to be like, well, did the injury affect him long term? Because we have this note on Liz Frank now, potentially impacting production down the line. Also, is he good? Is he still good? Or is he going to be another Rashad Penny that's kind of like, he's going to be another Darius Geis? It's just like marred by injuries and never really gets to that full potential. You're going to have all these question marks, and all that question marks and doubt is going to suppress his market value, right? So for me, if I'm on a team, whether I'm contending or rebuilding, I'm not really interested in Travis Etienne, because if I'm a rebuilder, what do I stress? I stress buying as many value accruing assets as you can, right? Travis Etienne is not that, right? He's just someone that has a lot of question marks. So that 2022 first, for a fact it's going to go up in value. And people talk about how weak the 2022 class is. People talk about how strong the 2023 class is. And that might be true, but at the end of the day, a first-round pick in Superflex is going to increase in value no matter what. There's enough running backs. There's enough quarterbacks. There's enough, high upside quarterbacks that if they make it into the first round, it's going to make that first round very interesting. And there's a decent amount of wide receivers that are studs as well. So for me, I think if you can trade Travis Etienne for anything that's first round equivalent value, you have to do it. Because there's just no point. Like basically someone's giving you a get out of jail free card, and maybe you take a 10-20% value hit from where you drafted him, because he was going even when he was drafted, he wasn't even going that high. He's going in that 1.06 1.08 range of Superflex. That's at least where I was landing him. So if he was going earlier than that, I didn't want any part of it, but given where he was going, that's where I was landing him. So you're probably not even going to lose that much value. Like, that's a middling pick, right? And in any first you get, you can assume it's a middling pick. And who knows, man, maybe you use that pick next year, you get yourself a Breece Hall and Isaiah Spiller, who honestly I think is probably as good, if not better, prospect than Travis Etienne at the end of the day. So I think it's just a no-brainer if you get a 2022 or 2023 first value, and the 2023 first could easily surpass Travis Etienne in value, just based on how good that running back class is right now, or at least how it looks. So for me, the difference between buying in on an injured player versus not buying in on an injured player is like history. Like, do they have history in the NFL? And Travis Etienne does not have that. Like, Saquon Barkley, right? I got a lot of Saquon Barkley when he was injured because I know what he is, right? Or at least I think I know what he is. He's gotten elite seasons as a rookie. He's gotten elite seasons even when he was injured, coming back from a high ankle sprain, right? So that's someone where I was comfortable with knowing that if they started showing like any flashes of their prior self, you could bet that, the community and the market as a whole would kind of like take that into account and be like, oh yeah, like he's back. Let's put him back to where he belongs, top 3 running back in Dynasty, right? Michael Thomas is another one where I'm like, I'm okay acquiring this guy at an injury discount because he's one of the most prolific age-adjusted producers in the NFL, right? So if he gets back to form, I know exactly what Michael Thomas is. Even last year when he was injured, I know what he is. He's a 30% target hog, right? So those are guys, like more established guys, I think still have a lot of rope to grow in terms of their development in the NFL. that have produced and proven it. Those are the types of injury discounts that I'm looking to acquire. Not really the unproven ones, because the unproven ones have to overcome two things. Remember this. Psychologically, they have to overcome not only the injury, but then they have to overcome the doubts of, like, whether they're still a bust, right? Because there hasn't been any evidence of them. So that's what makes the Travis Etienne situation really, really unique, in that if I'm getting like a first round pick from him, it's an absolute no-brainer. I'll give you an example of a trade that I did. So in one of my leagues, it's a 12-team super flex league, 0.25 points per carry, full PPR, and it's a 1.5 tight end premium, but you don't have to start a tight end. So you can start a wide receiver tight end. There's a wide receiver tight end flex spot where you guys would normally see just a tight end slot. And what that does is it kind of devalues a tight end a lot, because you don't have to start one. So really now, like, you take all your tight ends, and how people say, like, wow, you can start a wide receiver in your tight end slot. Well, you can do that now. So, the tight ends that are really good just kind of like lose a little bit of value, and the tight ends that aren't good like are basically worthless, because you can just find wide receivers starting that spot. Unless it's like a decent tight end. So I traded Travis Etienne in that league for TJ Hawkinson, plus a future second round pick. So I think that's basically, I try to manufacture like a first round equivalent value. TJ Hawkinson's probably worth, it might be worth a first in that league, maybe, if he blows up this year, but if not, he definitely isn't. So he's kind of worth a little bit more than the second, and then I got a future second round pick. So it's kind of like 2 seconds, right? 2 seconds, but like a very high second with upside. So that basically gets me into that like mid first range, or at least close to it, right? So that's my thinking for that type of trade. And so, that's one trade I did with Travis Etienne, and I'm going to try and do other trades as well. I haven't gotten any bites in some other leagues, and luckily I got sniped on Travis Etienne in a couple leagues. So I ended up settling for Javonte Williams, who I'm becoming much, much more excited about. But that's just to give you an example of like things. You don't have to get exactly a first round pick. You can kind of manufacture and play around with it to try and get it to where it is you think you need to be on the value. But for me, at anything like a first round pick in super flex leagues, Travis Etienne is currently someone that I'm trying to dump. Okay. And I think you guys should be as well. Try and let go of the draft capital you invested, and try and recoup what you can, man. You take a 20% loss, and you de-risk your team as a rebuilder. And even on a contender, obviously you don't want Travis Etienne, because he's not going to contribute to your team. So as a contender, you're trying to look for a first, or like a player in that range that can help contribute to your team, right? So maybe try and get like a Jerry Jeudy plus if possible. Try and get maybe like an Elijah Moore plus, Rashad Bateman plus, or try and add a little bit and swap him into a Javonte Williams. I think these are all moves that you should be trying to make if you have Travis Etienne as a contender, because there just isn't really any benefit, whether you're a contender or rebuilder, to hold on to him for a year and just not know what's going to happen, right? And I would much rather, even as a contender, try and flip into a first round pick, because that first round pick has a lot of liquidity, right? You can take that first round pick in season and trade it for whatever you want. And I'll talk about that with my next trade, and that's what I was trying to do. But these are the moves you have to make when players are injured, and you can't always blindly go on a buying spree when players are injured, right? I know that's like the natural reaction, where like if you think a player is really good, right? Injury discount, of course that's a buy, right? But it's different when you're buying into a Saquon Barkley versus a Travis Etienne, right? For a lot of the reasons I said, it's just a lot of unknowns and a lot of development missed for an early player. So that's not really what you want to see. And if you think about it, the most lucrative a rookie running back, the reason why you want these young rookie running backs is you want them on their rookie contract, right? So if Travis Etienne's gone for a year, that's 25% of his most lucrative time with you on his team, or with him on your team, that you've lost, right? So these are the factors you really need to think about and break down like case by case basis to figure out whether you should be going on an injured player or not. And for me, he definitely isn't. All right, now let's talk about my boy JK Dobbins. JK Dobbins, freaking love this guy. Coming in last season, I thought he was gonna be a monster. He got put in a committee, but we got to see, he kind of got unleashed a little bit towards the end of the year and what he was able to do, and that was very exciting. So it's a little bit of a different scenario than a Travis Etienne, because I got to see evidence that JK Dobbins was really good, and we know he's on the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. Mark Ingram departed, and he had to split the backfield with Gus Edwards for sure. But we saw that JK Dobbins was going to be given the lead role in that backfield, right? He was incredibly efficient. He was just a really, really good player on a dominant offense. So it just really, really sucks to see young players like that kind of get hit hard. And again, some of the things I say about Travis Etienne also apply to JK Dobbins, right? Again, rookie year is the most lucrative contract. This was going to be hopefully his breakout season, right? And that's completely erased. So 25% of his most lucrative year is going to be down the drain, right? And, he tore an ACL and tore an LCL. And, there's still some question marks, right? We don't know whether he's going to get receiving work. We don't know how much involvement Gus was going to get, right? And Gus Edwards isn't like a total scrub, right? He's someone that also was pretty efficient in the offense and was pretty good with the opportunity that he was given. Now, is Gus Edwards going to usurp JK Dobbins? I don't think so, because when they were both on the field, it was pretty clear who the better player was. At least it was to me, and who actually has the ability to be involved in the receiving game, and that's JK Dobbins. So if JK Dobbins makes a full recovery, I fully expect him to come back. But again, mentioned a little bit of complications regarding his injuries, not just your standard ACL tear. It could be like an LCL. I don't know. I'm not a medical doctor, but shout out to the Twitter doctors that have pointed this out. It could be a pretty complicated injury. Now, JK Dobbins I think he got injured when he was in high school or something that caused him to miss the season. He was able to come back from that. So, mentally, I hope that he's ready to kind of go up that battle. But secondly, we know that people that come back from ACL is not necessarily someone you want to jump all in on. Now, granted, I've jumped all in on Saquon Barkley because I think he is a god and not really a human. He's basically a cyborg. But I don't make it a habit to jump in on guys right after they tear the ACL. Like after Dalvin Cook tore his ACL, I was not in on Dalvin Cook that year. And, it showed because, people talk about injury prone. It's not really injury prone. It's just that when you tear your ACL, it seems like there's a case where players have to overcompensate, and that's what leads to hamstring injuries and other soft tissue injuries. So that's why I don't really fuck with ACL injuries the year after. So again, if we think back to J.K. Dobbins' case, even though he's proven and he's good, you're kind of concerned, right? Because you miss an entire year for sure, right? And then you come back and it's like he's probably not going to be full. So then you're looking at 2023 basically, right? When you're expecting full unleash J.K. Dobbins, who knows what happens by then, right? Gus Edwards is pretty capable. They signed him. They obviously like him. Maybe Gus Edwards blows up this year and then he secures a role and becomes a committee forever. And we never see J.K. Dobbins' workload ever unleashed, right? Or, J.K. Dobbins doesn't recover as well. There's a lot of question marks there. So even though we've seen the proof that J.K. Dobbins is kind of a very good player, and we've seen that proof in the NFL play out already, there's still a lot of question marks there. So for me, J.K. Dobbins isn't necessarily as hard of a sell as Travis Etienne, but he's still someone where I feel like if I'm getting, somewhere in that two first round pick value range, or maybe even like a first round pick plus 2 seconds, I think that's a good time to get out as well. And I recently traded J.K. Dobbins for a 2022 first, probably a middling 2022 first, and a 2024 first. Right, so that kind of falls in that first round pick plus a second round pick plus type of range, right? Because a early second round pick in 2022 versus a 2024 first round pick is probably similar in value depending on time of value. And this is a team where I'm a top contender and I'm a defending champ. Actually, it's the same team that I did the trade in Travis Etienne. So I lost Travis Etienne and I lost JK Dobbins in the same fucking offseason. My team is still pretty damn good. I have Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley. I have James Robinson, the god himself, of course. I have Darrell Henderson, so I'm okay at running back if I don't lose anymore. Now, if Saquon Barkley comes out and he gets injured, or JT comes out, he gets injured, then I'm in trouble. I'll still have a competing team because I have freaking Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson, and it's a 0.25 PPC Superflex league, and I have a bunch of stud wide receivers like AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, all that shit. So I'll still compete, but I won't be as strong as what I would have been. But I traded JK Dobbins for those first. The reason why is because now I have liquidity, right? In season, if I'm pushing for a chip and I lose a player, I can go and acquire good players that aren't just 1 year rentals, my first round picks. I have 2 first in 2022, I have 3 first in 2023, and now I have 2 first in 2024. So this is a roster defending champion team that can go the distance, even eating these injuries. And I talk about what it means to be a contender. This is what it means. When you're a true contender, you can lose a couple pieces that are studs and still be a top contending team. Having that type of depth is what separates true contenders from pretenders. Okay, so Anyways, back to the matter at hand. JK Dobbins. I think I would be looking for more than Travis Etienne. So just a single 2022 first probably wouldn't do it for me for JK Dobbins because he's still a very immense talent, and I think people are willing to pay more because it's not as much of an unknown as a Travis Etienne, right? I think James Robinson is a much bigger threat to Travis Etienne than Gus Edwards is to JK Dobbins, just because James Robinson already proved it as a workhorse and a lead back, and Gus Edwards is not. So it's a little bit of a different scenario, right? And so I think you should try and target 2 first value, but if people aren't willing to give that, just take a little bit of a discount. Maybe target that like 1 first plus 2 seconds, or 1 first plus a piece, a young rookie, a young stud wide receiver plus a first, something in that range if you're trying to get out on JK Dobbins. And I think it's wise to at least explore that. You don't have to get out 100%. I'm willing to get out of 100% of Travis Etienne right now, but I'm not willing to get out of 100% of JK Dobbins just because there is that proven part. And again, Ravens, even in committee, they're one of the top running teams in the NFL. And being attached to Lamar Jackson, as bad as it is for your target share, is still good for your efficiency and your TD upside. So, JK Dobbins, the situation is just much better than the Jaguars. I don't believe in Urban Meyer at all. And I just don't believe in that team because I think Urban Meyer is a fraud. And I think people are going to be disappointed with that offense yet again. Trevor Lawrence is definitely going to help, but it's still going to be a struggle. So I just wanted to give those examples, right? I hope that was helpful to kind of just see the examples of Cam Akers versus Travis Etienne versus J.K. Dobbins versus what I did with, Saquon Barkley and MT, someone that's more experienced. These are the things that you have to think about. Like, not every injury is created equal, so you can't treat every injury as a buy low opportunity. That's not how it is, even if it's a player that you like. Like, even if it is a Travis Etienne, even if it is a J.K. Dobbins. If you guys remember, I was pounding the table for J.K. Dobbins last season after he landed with the Baltimore Ravens. And as much as I love him, like, you just have to take a more impartial approach and really analyze the situation and make sure that you're applying each situation and analyzing each situation as it is in its own kind of different silo and a different set of circumstances, right? And that's exactly what you need to do in these types of situations, and don't just follow the herd and be like buy low, sell high, whatever. Like, every single situation different, so you really got to assess and make a balanced assessment to determine what it is you want to do. And for me, that's what I'm going to do for these 3 guys. We'll kind of see how it goes throughout the rest of the season. But it is what it is. And last piece of news that I wanted to cover real quick is Mac Jones. Mac Jones got announced as a starter today. I'm recording this Tuesday night, so it'll be yesterday for you guys that are viewing the show. What does that mean, right? And I see a lot of people like vaulting Damian Harris, up their ranks. I'm not so sure about that, right? He definitely gets to open up some goal line opportunities, right? But I think, if anything, like James White probably becomes a little bit more interesting, even though I hate satellite backs, but he's so cheap and free that I think Mac Jones, just getting that rookie quarterback in there, they're going to create some more easy scenarios for him. So I think he's going to be a pretty big beneficiary. Damian Harris, for sure, gets some goal line looks. And then, I think the passing volume obviously kind of goes up, right? Mac Jones is a better passer than Cam Newton. So my boy Jacoby Myers gets a little bit of a bump, although I was already assuming that, Mac Jones is going to start at some point in the season. But whatever it is, he still gets that slight bump, given we know Mac Jones is definitely going to start from game 1. Personally, I'm excited about the Patriots and want to see what the future holds in store with this young buck at the helm with Mac Jones. Shout out to those of you guys out there who called it early. He's going to start. Is he going to be a fantasy stud? That remains to be seen, man. I've always said that, Mac Jones' upside is probably more like a Kirk Cousins, which isn't bad at all. I mean, that's a great QB2 in Superflex. He probably doesn't have the rushing upside. And, I'm not betting on him to become the next Tom Brady GOAT and throw like 40 touchdowns. It's possible. It's definitely, within that range of outcomes. Probably not within the probable range of outcomes because, Tom Brady is kind of like a once in a generation type player. So, that's not what I'm expecting. But I think things are looking up for this team as a whole. Personally, I think I'm getting a little bit more interested in Ramondre Stevenson. He's someone that I've had a lot of on my teams, but I just wasn't really like fully engulfed in the hype of the preseason that everyone else seemed to be, right? I had a lot of stock in him, but I was still just tempering expectations. But, he has been producing well. He has been performing well, and the drumbeat has been strong, and he has shown up like time and time again in the preseason. It wasn't just a one fluky type appearance. So I think, I'm more interested in that offense just to see kind of what Ramondre Stevenson can get. He could fully get some goal line work as well. I mean, he's a freaking monster back there. We know the Patriots use a committee back system. They don't really like giving it a workhorse, and Ramondre Stevenson is definitely also a capable pass catcher. Like I said, I think it's probably going to go mostly James White, and it's going to be a little bit of a headache to deal with all three of them. But for Dynasty, I'm interested in Ramondre, right? As far as Damian Harris is concerned, I think this will probably drive him into a price range where I'm no longer interested because people are going to just go too crazy. I already see on Twitter, like, it's Damian Harris season. Like, he's going to get a bunch of touchdowns. Cam Newton vacated 22 goal line carries, right? And I think the issue with thinking about that is, like, you can't think of it the same as, like, it's not necessarily the same as vacated, like, running back opportunities, and it's not, but it's also not on the extreme of vacated targets because obviously he's still running it. But, like, I think what people need to realize is, like, Cam Newton, like, created those opportunities, right? Like, if you don't have Cam Newton back there, you're not running the ball that many times. I mean, they barely had any passing touchdowns last year. They had like 14 or something passing touchdowns last year. You'd imagine that with Mac Jones at the helm, like, it's going to reverse a lot more to the other side. So it's not like Damian Harris is going to get all those goal line carries. If anything, there's probably going to be more passing on the goal line. And then also now you have Ramondre Stevenson to probably mix him in there. So I think personally, Damian Harris is going to be overvalued in both redraft and dynasty. I still have him a lot lower in my dynasty. I think him and Gus Edwards are probably around the same. Is going to be end up being the same in my ranks because that just makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I think they're both very similar type roles, except Gus Edwards on a much better team with a much higher rushing volume. So if anything, Gus Edwards should be better than Damian Harris. And for me, I'm just going to take the cheaper guy in Ramondre Stevenson and bet on him long-term in Dynasty because I haven't really seen that much from Damian Harris. That makes me want to be like, okay, this guy's going to be a stud. So maybe I'll be wrong. We'll see. I mean, I hope he turns into a stud. That's great for my team. I hope someone turns into a stud. But I think at the end of the day, I'm personally stepping back a little bit from the Damian Harris hype and all the Patriots running back hype. I'm still in on Jacoby Myers. I think James White is somewhat interesting as a deep end flex. And then Ramondre Stevenson as a dynasty investment should be pretty good. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be necessarily paying anything more than a second round pick for Ramondre Stevenson, if that. But, he's interesting, right? He's interesting. He's shown a little bit of juice that no one knew that he had, and he's just been performing pretty well. So, and obviously, I guess the drum beat kind of beats strong for him. So that's kind of my stance on that whole thing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. We covered some injuries. We covered how to deal with injuries. I walked you through my thought process there and talked a little bit about the Patriots backfield and what I think is a little bit of a overreaction on Damian Harris hype right now. If you enjoyed, as always, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to our channel, hit that alert button so you know when the next videos are dropping, especially when I delay a video like this. Hopefully this doesn't happen very often, but it happened this time. So again, apologies for that. But I'll be coming back to you strong every single week on this channel. We'll be here. The season is finally here. Real football is finally here. We're done with the preseason. We're into the real, and it's going to be freaking exciting. So I'm pumped. Hopefully you guys are pumped too. And then the last thing is, if you guys aren't already doing so, please come check us out. Patreon.com/OurPack, the Wolfpack, the best dynasty community you will run into. I'm on the Discord all the time. We're hopping in there talking strategy, talking trades. Right now, we're mid-draft of the Alphas Only Dynasty League. It is a 24-team, two-copy league. Super flex, start 2 tight end premium, 0.25 points per carry, tiered PPR for running back, wide receiver, and tight end, as well as tiered points per first down. And it's a Devy league, but it's like so many kinks and whistles. People are having fun. I'm having fun in the draft. I'll probably do an episode breaking down the entire draft, or at least the first few rounds of the draft, in one of these next episodes, potentially next week, just to give you my assessment on the team, my strategy, what I did, and what I think of some of the draft picks and what some of the other guys have done. It's been pretty interesting. It's been one of the toughest drafts I've been in, just because I'm drafting with a bunch of you guys out there that are just as smart as me, if not smarter, and also know all my ranks, know all my players. So it's kind of like playing against 23 other me's that have their own flavor on things. So it's been super interesting, but it's super, super challenging. It's probably the toughest draft that I've been. I swear to God, like for the first 5-6 rounds, like there was no value. Like no value fell. Like usually by the third round, you see some cool value that falls. No value. Like no value falls. People just taking the best players, at least in my opinion, the best players. And Nobody's reaching for shit, and it's just I've implemented a little bit of a different strategy. I've traded up a lot more in this draft than I normally do, but it's been interesting. So I'll break that down for you guys next week. But until then, that's all I got for you. This is Mike. Peace out.